Anger isn't who you are. It's your nervous system under pressure. And understanding this changes everything. If you snap at people over small things, lose your temper in situations that don't deserve that reaction, or feel like rage takes over before you even realize what's happening, pay attention. This isn't about being a bad person. This is neuroscience. Before we go deeper, hit that like button and subscribe because we're diving into real psychology and nervous system regulation that actually makes sense. Psychologically, anger is not a personality trait. It's a nervous system response. Your brain generates anger when it perceives threat, when boundaries get violated, or when your system is overwhelmed and doesn't know how else to discharge stress. From a neurological perspective, anger starts in the amygdala. That's your threat detection center. When it activates, cortisol and adrenaline flood your body. Your heart races, muscles tense, vision narrows. That's fight mode. Here's what most people miss. The angrier you get over small things, the more dysregulated your nervous system already is. You're not overreacting to what's in front of you. You're reacting to accumulated stress your body never processed. Behaviorally, this shows up in patterns. You're calm most of the day, functional, productive. Then someone makes a small comment and you explode. That's not proportional anger. That's a nervous system running on fumes finally hitting its limit. According to trauma psychology, chronic anger signals hypervigilance. Your system stays on high alert because it learned the world isn't safe. Maybe you grew up in chaos. Maybe you experienced betrayal or neglect. Your brain adapted by staying ready to fight constantly. The problem is that adaptation doesn't turn off when the threat is gone. Your nervous system keeps running the same program. Scan for danger, react fast, protect yourself, even when there's nothing to protect yourself from. Neurologically, this creates a low activation threshold. Your nervous system is like a hypersensitive smoke detector. It goes off when you toast bread. Chronic stress does that to your amygdala. It makes it overreactive. Here's what happens physiologically. When you're chronically stressed, baseline cortisol stays elevated. Your body never fully returns to calm. Then something small happens, and your system tips over the edge. A traffic jam, a miscommunication, a dish in the sink. People with regulated nervous systems absorb minor frustrations without major reactions. People with dysregulated systems can't. Not because they lack discipline, but because their system is already maxed out. There's no buffer left. Psychologically, anger is also a secondary emotion. It covers what you're really feeling underneath. Fear, hurt, shame, powerlessness. Anger feels stronger than those emotions. It feels like control. So your brain defaults to it even when what you actually need is to process the vulnerable feelings hiding below. This is why people who struggle with anger feel misunderstood. They're not trying to be aggressive. They're trying to protect themselves from overwhelming feelings. Anger becomes armor. Behaviorally, chronic anger creates relational patterns that reinforce dysregulation. You snap at someone, they pull away, or react defensively. That confirms your belief that people aren't safe. Your nervous system stays on alert. The cycle continues. Here's the part that changes everything. When you understand anger is a nervous system response, not a character flaw, you stop pathologizing yourself. You stop thinking something is broken in you. You start asking, what is my nervous system trying to tell me? From a somatic perspective, anger lives in your body before it reaches your mind. Your jaw clenches, fists tighten, chest constricts. These are early warnings that your system is shifting into fight mode. Most people only notice once they're already yelling. Regulating anger isn't about suppression. Suppression makes it worse. It's about expanding your window of tolerance. That's the range of activation your nervous system can handle, without tipping into fight, flight, or freeze. Neurologically, you expand this window through co-regulation and self-regulation. Co-regulation means being around calm people. Their regulated system helps yours downshift. Self-regulation means developing reset tools, breathwork, movement, grounding exercises. These directly impact your vagal tone. The vagus nerve is the highway between your brain and body. When it functions well, It helps you shift out of fight mode back to calm. When it's underactive, you get stuck in sympathetic activation. More irritability, more anger, more reactivity. According to polyvagal theory, your nervous system has 3 states. Ventral vagal is calm and connected. Sympathetic is fight or flight. Dorsal vagal is shut down and freeze. People with chronic anger spend most time in sympathetic. Their system never drops into ventral vagal long enough to recover. Here's what people get wrong about anger management. They try to control thoughts while their nervous system is still in fight mode. That doesn't work. You can't think your way out of a nervous system state. You have to shift the physiology first. Practically, when anger rises, don't analyze why. Help your body downregulate. Take slow breaths with longer exhales. That activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Splash cold water on your face. Do progressive muscle relaxation. These target the autonomic nervous system directly. Behaviorally, people who manage anger well develop awareness of their triggers. Not just external triggers like certain people or situations, but internal ones. Fatigue, hunger, sensory overload, emotional overwhelm. When you know your system is taxed, you create boundaries preemptively instead of reacting explosively. High-functioning individuals who used to struggle with anger don't have fewer triggers. They have better recovery tools. They know how to bring their system back to baseline before it escalates. They treat regulation like a skill, not a personality trait. Here's another layer. Chronic anger links to unmet needs. Psychologically, anger signals something important to you is being violated or ignored. Your need for respect, rest, autonomy, being heard. When those needs go unacknowledged, anger becomes the loudest communication your system knows. The issue is, most people weren't taught to identify or communicate needs clearly. So instead of saying, "I need space," or "I need you to listen," they just get angry. The anger becomes a placeholder for deeper communication that never happens. Relationally, this creates a destructive cycle. Your partner or friend doesn't understand what you need. They only see anger. They respond to the anger, not the need underneath. You feel more misunderstood. The anger intensifies. Breaking this requires emotional granularity, the ability to name specific emotions instead of defaulting to anger. Instead of "I'm pissed off," you realize "I'm feeling dismissed. I'm feeling unseen. I'm feeling like my effort doesn't matter." When you name the real emotion, you can communicate it. Neurologically, emotional granularity links to better prefrontal cortex function. That's your regulation center. It helps you pause and choose a response instead of reacting. But when you're chronically stressed, your prefrontal cortex gets overridden by your amygdala. Strengthening prefrontal function happens through consistent practices. Mindfulness, therapy, somatic work, reflective journaling. These build neural pathways that give you more control over responses. From a trauma-informed perspective, people who experience childhood environments where anger was the only acceptable emotion struggle most. If sadness was ignored, fear was mocked, or vulnerability was punished, anger becomes the only emotional language they know. Healing means relearning the full emotional spectrum, giving yourself permission to feel sad without calling it weakness, to feel scared without calling it cowardice, to feel hurt without converting it to rage. Here's the reality. If you struggle with anger, you're not broken. Your nervous system adapted to survive an environment that required hypervigilance and self-protection. That adaptation worked. It kept you safe. But now it creates problems instead of solving them. The shift happens when you stop fighting against anger and start working with your nervous system. You stop asking, "Why am I like this?" and start asking, "What does my system need right now to feel safe?" Behaviorally, this looks like creating a regulation toolkit. For some people, it's physical movement. Running, boxing, dancing. Movement discharges the activation anger creates. For others, it's creative expression. Writing, painting, music. Creativity gives intensity somewhere to go besides explosive reactions. For some people, regulation comes through connection, talking to trusted friends, being held, feeling seen. Social connection activates ventral vagal and helps you feel safe. For others, it's solitude, time alone to process and reset without external stimulation. The key is knowing what works for your unique nervous system. There's no one-size-fits-all. What regulates one person might dysregulate another. You have to experiment and pay attention to what brings your system back to calm. Anger often spikes during transitions. Waking up, coming home from work, switching tasks. Transitions require your system to adapt to new states. If your system is already hot, transitions feel destabilizing. That's why people snap at family the moment they walk through the door. Creating buffer zones during transitions helps immensely. Instead of going straight from car to house, sit for 5 minutes. Breathe. Let your system adjust. Instead of jumping from task to task, take a 60-second pause. These micro moments prevent buildup that leads to explosive anger. Neurologically, sleep deprivation is one of the biggest contributors to irritability. When you're sleep deprived, your amygdala becomes 60% more reactive. Your prefrontal cortex function drops. You lose regulation capacity. That's not character. That's brain science. Prioritizing sleep isn't self-care. It's nervous system maintenance. If you're running on less than 7 hours consistently, your anger issues aren't just psychological. They're physiological. Your brain doesn't have resources to regulate effectively. From a nutritional standpoint, blood sugar crashes trigger stress responses that mimic anger. When blood sugar drops, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline to mobilize stored glucose. That biochemical response feels like agitation and irritability. Balanced meals with protein, fat, and fiber stabilize blood sugar and reduce unnecessary activation. Here's what people resist. If your anger is chronic and significantly impacting your life, working with a therapist trained in nervous system regulation can be life-changing. Somatic therapy, EMDR, internal family systems, polyvagal informed therapy. These address anger at the nervous system level, not just cognitive. Traditional talk therapy helps you understand why you're angry. Somatic therapy helps you shift physiological patterns that keep you stuck. Both have value, but if talk therapy didn't work, explore body-based approaches. People who've transformed their relationship with anger describe a shift in internal experience. They still feel anger, but it doesn't consume them. It doesn't control them. They feel it rise, acknowledge it, and have tools to work with it before it takes over. That's not about becoming emotionless or passive. It's about becoming responsive instead of reactive. Responsive means you feel the anger, understand what it's signaling, and choose how to express it in ways that honor both your needs and your relationships. Anger is information. It tells you something matters. It tells you a boundary was crossed. It tells you you're overwhelmed. When you decode the message instead of discharging the intensity, anger becomes useful instead of destructive. Here's another critical piece. Anger in professional settings often gets mislabeled as passion or drive. You snap at colleagues during meetings. You send aggressive emails when projects don't go your way. You justify it as caring about quality or having high standards. But it's dysregulation masked as excellence. The most successful professionals aren't the ones who never feel angry. They're the ones who can feel angry and still communicate clearly. They can advocate for themselves without burning bridges. They can set boundaries without creating hostile environments. Workplace anger often stems from feeling undervalued or powerless. You work hard, your contributions get overlooked, and anger becomes the only way you feel seen. But that anger alienates the exact people who could advocate for you. It reinforces the isolation that caused the anger in the first place. From a leadership perspective, leaders who struggle with anger create cultures of fear. Teams stop bringing problems forward. Innovation dies because people are too scared to take risks. High performers leave. The anger that was supposed to drive results actually sabotages them. Regulated leaders create psychological safety. Their teams know they can disagree, make mistakes, or challenge ideas without facing explosive reactions. That safety breeds trust. Trust breeds performance. Performance breeds sustainable success. In romantic relationships, anger shows up differently. You might be calm with everyone else but volatile with your partner. That's not because your partner is uniquely problematic. It's because intimate relationships activate attachment wounds your nervous system is still protecting. Psychologically, the people we love most have the most power to trigger us. They get past our defenses. They see our vulnerabilities. When they do something that echoes old wounds, our system reacts as if the original threat is happening now. This is why people often say hurtful things to partners they'd never say to strangers. The intimacy removes the social regulation that keeps anger in check with others. Your nervous system feels safe enough to discharge the intensity it's been holding. But that discharge damages the relationship. Couples who navigate anger well develop repair skills. They don't avoid conflict. They repair after conflict. They acknowledge when they cross lines. They take responsibility for their dysregulation. They don't blame their partner for triggering them. From an attachment perspective, people with anxious attachment often experience anger as protest. They're not angry about the specific situation. They're angry about the perceived threat of abandonment that situation represents. The anger says, "Don't leave me," even though the words might say, "I hate you." People with avoidant attachment use anger as distance. When intimacy feels threatening, anger creates space. It pushes people away before they can get close enough to hurt you. The anger protects you from vulnerability, but also prevents real connection. People with disorganized attachment swing between both. They crave closeness, but explode when they get it. They push people away, then panic when they leave. The anger is chaotic because the underlying attachment system is chaotic. Healing attachment-based anger requires understanding these patterns. It requires recognizing when you're reacting to past wounds versus present reality. It requires building earned secure attachment through consistent regulation and repair. Here's what changes in parent-child dynamics. Parents who struggle with anger often feel immense shame. They yell at their kids, then hate themselves for it. They vow to do better, then repeat the same patterns. That shame doesn't help. It adds another layer of dysregulation. Psychologically, parenting activates every unresolved issue you have. Your kids push boundaries. They have meltdowns. They don't listen. All of that triggers your nervous system, especially if you weren't parented with regulation yourself. Kids don't need perfect parents. They need parents who can repair. When you lose your temper, you come back. You acknowledge it. You apologize. You model that adults make mistakes and take responsibility. That teaches emotional intelligence better than never getting angry would. From a developmental perspective, how you handle your anger teaches your kids how to handle theirs. If you explode and never repair, they learn anger is destructive and shameful. If you regulate and repair, they learn anger is manageable and temporary. The goal isn't to never feel angry around your kids. The goal is to show them what regulated anger looks like, what it looks like to feel intense emotion and still choose your response, what it looks like to mess up and make it right. Here's the financial component people overlook. Anger costs money. You make impulsive decisions when angry. You quit jobs without backup plans. You spend money to feel better. You damage professional relationships that could have led to opportunities. Behaviorally, anger-driven decisions almost always backfire. You send that email in rage and can't unsend it. You walk out of a negotiation and lose leverage. You fire someone in anger and face legal consequences. Dysregulated anger has real economic impact. People who regulate well make better financial decisions. Not because they're smarter, but because they can tolerate discomfort without reacting. They can sit with frustration, evaluate options, and choose strategically instead of emotionally. From a health perspective, chronic anger wrecks your body. It increases cortisol long-term. That suppresses immune function, raises blood pressure, increases inflammation, and accelerates aging. You're not just damaging relationships, you're damaging your cardiovascular system. Studies show people with high-trait anger have significantly higher rates of heart disease. The anger isn't just a risk factor, it's a direct contributor. Every time you rage, you're flooding your system with stress hormones that damage arterial walls and promote plaque buildup. Sleep quality tanks when you're chronically angry. You ruminate at night. You replay conflicts. Your nervous system can't downshift into restorative sleep. Poor sleep makes you more irritable the next day. The cycle compounds. Digestive issues are common with chronic anger. Your gut and brain communicate constantly. When your nervous system is in fight mode, digestion shuts down. Chronic activation leads to IBS, acid reflux, and other GI problems. Your anger is literally eating you from the inside. Here's the social cost. Chronically angry people lose friendships. Not because people don't care, but because being around someone who's always volatile is exhausting. Friends stop inviting you places. They stop confiding in you. They quietly distance themselves. Behaviorally, anger creates reputation damage that's hard to reverse. You might apologize after blowing up, but people remember. They start walking on eggshells. They don't bring up certain topics. They don't trust you with sensitive information. Your anger has created a cage. From a career standpoint, anger limits advancement. You might be brilliant at your job, but if you can't regulate emotions, you won't get promoted into leadership. Organizations don't reward volatility. They reward composure under pressure. The most successful people across industries share one trait. They can handle stress without losing control. They can receive criticism without exploding. They can disagree without making it personal. That's not natural talent. That's nervous system regulation. Here's what recovery looks like. You start noticing your anger earlier. Instead of catching it after you've yelled, you catch it when your jaw clenches. That split second of awareness creates choice. You can pause. You can breathe. You can shift. Recovery means you have more good days than bad days. You still get triggered, but you recover faster. Instead of stewing for days, you reset in hours. Instead of destroying relationships, you repair quickly. Progress isn't perfection. It's faster recovery. You start recognizing your anger patterns. You notice you're angrier when you're hungry, when you haven't slept, when you've overcommitted. That awareness lets you create buffers. You eat regularly. You protect sleep. You say no more often. You remove unnecessary stressors. From a relational standpoint, recovery means people start trusting you again. They stop walking on eggshells. They bring up difficult topics because they know you can handle them. They see you as safe again. That trust takes time to rebuild, but it's possible. Here's the spiritual component some people find helpful. Many wisdom traditions teach that anger is a teacher. It shows you where you're attached, where you're afraid, where you're trying to control what you can't. When you stop seeing anger as the enemy and start seeing it as information, the relationship changes. You can feel angry and curious at the same time. You can notice I'm feeling rage right now and ask, what is this protecting me from? Usually underneath anger is fear. Fear of being hurt, abandoned, disrespected, or powerless. When you address the fear, the anger softens. This doesn't mean spiritual bypassing. It doesn't mean pretending you're not angry or that anger is an illusion. It means bringing compassionate awareness to the anger instead of being consumed by it. There's a difference between I am angry and I am noticing anger. From a neuroplasticity standpoint, your brain can change. Neural pathways that fire together wire together. Every time you pause instead of react, you strengthen the pause pathway. Every time you regulate instead of explode, you strengthen the regulation pathway. This takes repetition. You won't get it right every time. You'll still have moments where you lose it. But each time you catch yourself earlier, each time you repair faster, you're rewiring your brain. Over months and years, the default response shifts. Here's what people need to hear. Your anger doesn't make you unlovable. It doesn't make you irredeemable. It makes you human with a nervous system that's doing its best to protect you. The protection just isn't working anymore. It's time for new strategies. You deserve relationships where you feel calm. You deserve a body that isn't constantly flooded with stress hormones. You deserve to make decisions from clarity instead of rage. You deserve to break the patterns that were handed to you and create new ones. This work is hard. It requires honesty about patterns you'd rather deny. It requires vulnerability to admit you need help. It requires consistency when you'd rather give up. But the alternative is staying stuck in cycles that damage you and everyone around you. If someone came to mind while watching this, someone who struggles with anger, or someone who's been affected by yours, share this video. Drop a comment sharing one thing that helps you when anger rises. And if you haven't subscribed, do it now and turn on notifications, because we're going deep into nervous system science, emotional regulation, and psychology that creates real change. Your anger doesn't define you. Your nervous system just needs support. And now you know where to start. Nam wide.